A young Navy SEAL begins her morning, proving she belongs, only to be publicly humiliated by a Marine who believes women have no place among warriors. But over the next 2 weeks, every insult becomes fuel, every doubt becomes a target, and one impossible challenge turns Sarah Mitchell into a legend. This hook sells the story as an underdog war drama where respect is not given, it is taken the hard way.
Before dawn broke over the Pacific, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell completed her 200th push-up. It was 05:30 at Coronado, the air thick with salt and diesel. Her muscles burned, but her breath was controlled. She would not fail. 30 Navy SEALs moved in perfect unison around her. It was the cadence of warriors who had earned their tridents through pure hell, and she was one of them. At 5'3" and 125 pounds, she was the smallest operator on SEAL Team 5. At 26, she'd been on the team for 2 years, 3 months, and 14 days. Every morning, she cemented her place. Time. Master Chief Robert Turner's command cut through the morning quiet. Recovery, stretch, move. Sarah rose fluidly, no tremble in her limbs. She knew weakness bred questions, questions bred doubt, and doubt created body bags. The team stretched, silent and professional. This was her tribe. These men saw her survive Hell Week and earn her spot. Then the buses rolled in, carrying a challenge that would test her foundation and threaten her entire career in just 2 weeks. Before we go on, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell, and drop your city in the comments below. Now, back to the action. 3 OD green transports rumbled past the gate, bearing the United States Marine Corps insignia. Sarah felt the air charge instantly. The relationship between SEALs and Marines was a tense brotherhood built on respect and a fierce rivalry. The buses hissed open, unloading 6 male Marines with the unmistakable swagger of force recon. It was the confidence born from leaping from functional aircraft as a daily routine. Mitchell knew the type. Her father was one. The lead Marine, Bennett, was 6'2", about 195, with a jaw cut from stone and Staff Sergeant chevrons. Master Chief Turner approached with an extended hand. Master Chief Turner, welcome to Coronado. Bennett's handshake was firm, his eyes raking over the assembled SEALs. His gaze stopped on Sarah for 2 seconds, a sneer forming on his lips. His next words would light a fuse. Staff Sergeant Marcus Bennett, Force Recon. His voice boomed. My team is here for 2 weeks of joint training. Outstanding, Turner said, gesturing to the SEALs. My team is ready to go. We'll run combined ops, share TTPs, and build cohesion. Bennett's gaze locked back on Sarah, a mix of contempt and amusement on his face. All of your team? The question dripped with doubt. Sarah recognized it immediately. She'd faced that same tone from boot camp through every single training evolution. The skepticism was a constant companion. Bennett turned to his squad, his voice rising. Looks like Naval Special Warfare has lowered their standards, boys. He paused. Wonder if they're just brewing coffee for us. The Marines laughed. The SEALs remained quiet. Sarah felt 30 sets of eyes shift her way. She stayed locked at attention, her gaze forward, remembering her father's advice from when she was 12. Asterisk. When they come at you, kid, you become stone. You become water. Give them nothing. Asterisk. Bennett stepped closer, his boots grinding on the gravel, stopping 3 feet from her, close enough to crowd her, but far enough for deniability. What's your rate, sailor? The disrespect was a calculated shot. She met his stare, her voice even. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, SEAL Team 5. SEAL, he drew the word out, making it sound foul. How long have you been playing dress-up, Lieutenant? 2 years, Staff Sergeant. 2 whole years, he whistled. Boys, we got a real salty dog here. He grinned, but there was no warmth in it. Tell me, Lieutenant, did they lighten up Bud, S for you, lower the obstacle wall, maybe let you skip surf torture? A muscle in her jaw jumped the only sign of her anger. Same course. Same standards. Same Hell Week. Sure, Bennett smirked. I bet. He then addressed the formation. I'm positive the Navy gave you the exact same test as the men. No political pressure, no diversity hires, no calls from DC. He leaned in, his voice a low hiss. Try not to cry, princess. It's only 2 weeks. The insult landed like a blow, her hands clenched into tight fists. Every instinct screamed at her to react, to wipe that smirk from his face. But she was stone. Water. Air. Yes, Staff Sergeant. Her voice was flat, empty. He held her gaze for 3 long seconds before turning away to face the Master Chief. My Marines are ready to go, Master Chief, assuming this isn't a babysitting detail. Turner's face was a blank slate, a skill learned over 32 years of service. We're here to train, Staff Sergeant. Let's get your team settled. The formation broke apart. The Marines headed for the barracks as the SEALs dispersed. Sarah stood her ground until she was alone, then walked toward the beach. She needed a run. She didn't know that Bennett had just started a countdown to the most perilous night of her career. It would be a night that decided if warriors were born or made. The next 12 days became a clinic in psychological warfare. During every op, every brief, every meal, the jabs from the Marines were relentless. At the range, Sarah was shooting quals, 40 rounds from 300 yards with iron sights in a 15-knot wind. She called her shots and squeezed the trigger between heartbeats, a technique her father taught her. 40 rounds, 40 hits, all dead center. A perfect group. Bennett watched from the tower. Must be nice when they move the targets closer for you. Bet hers is 10 yards in, his Marine snickered. Sarah cleared her weapon without a word, adding another mark to her mental ledger. Bennett had no clue what was building in her. Next was a 2-mile ocean swim in 62-degree water, full kit and a 50-pound ruck. She'd grown up in these waves, learning to embrace the Pacific's frigid bite during Hell Week. The cold was an old ally. She hit the sand 8 minutes before the next man, breathing hard but controlled. No shivering. Bennett was on the beach, waiting. You caught a lucky current. Probably helps being small, less drag. Sarah wrung the seawater from her hair. Yes, Staff Sergeant. After that, it was live fire runs in the kill house. This was the most dangerous training, where one mistake sends someone home in a flag-draped casket. Her team cleared 6 rooms, hit 42 targets with 0 friendly fire incidents, all in 93 seconds. It was a flawless run. Bennett reviewed the tape. Anyone can shoot paper. It's different when the targets shoot back. His corporal, a man named Garcia, nodded. Women aren't wired for combat. It's biology. When it goes sideways, instinct takes over. 15 feet away, Sarah was cleaning her rifle. She heard it all and said nothing. But Garcia had just signed up for a lesson he could never imagine, and in 3 days, he'd regret it. The gym was full of operators from both branches, the floor covered in crash mats. The SEAL combatives instructor, a salty chief, called for 2 volunteers. I need a grappler and a striker. We're demonstrating integrated techniques. I volunteer Lieutenant Mitchell. Bennett's voice cut through the noise. The gym fell silent. Sarah saw his cold smile. Come on, Lieutenant, show us what these new SEAL standards are all about. The instructor started to object. Staff Sergeant, no disrespect, Chief. This is cross-branch integration, right? So let's integrate, Bennett pointed to his man. Corporal Garcia, here is a 3rd-degree Taekwondo black belt. He'll go easy. Garcia, 5'9" and about 170, stepped forward with the same smirk. I'll be gentle, ma'am. Sarah looked at the instructor. His expression confirmed it was a setup. It was a setup, pure political theater meant to break her. He offered a slight nod. Your move. Sarah stepped on the mat. No ritual, no warm-up, just pure motion. All right, the instructor said. We'll do a light demo. 20% speed, pure technique. Nah, that was Bennett's voice. Let's see some real-world shit. Full speed, full contact. Let's see what a SEAL is made of. The entire gym went dead silent. 60 operators, watching, waiting. This wasn't training. This was the final argument Bennett had been making for 12 solid days. Women don't belong in the teams. The instructor glanced at Sarah. You good with that, Lieutenant? Sarah squared up on Garcia, reading his posture, his balance, the forward tilt of a kicker, the relaxed shoulders of a striker who thinks he's already won. Her dad's voice echoed in her head. They always tell you how to lose, kiddo. You just gotta listen. Yes, Chief. Full contact works for me. What unfolded in the next 18 seconds would detonate a shockwave through the gym, sparking a challenge that would push Sarah to her absolute limit. Garcia's smirk grew wider. He bounced on his toes, all loose confidence, already picturing his highlight reel kick. The instructor let out a sigh. Okay, standard rules. No groin, no throat, no eye gouging. Fight's over on a tap, a verbal stop, or my call. He looked from one to the other. Touch gloves. Keep it clean. Their gloves met. Sarah's hand seemed fragile against Garcia's. Ready? The instructor chopped his hand down. Go. Garcia charged instantly. A jab to test range, then a spinning back kick, straight out of a Taekwondo manual. It was fast, a picture-perfect strike. It would have been a showstopper. But Sarah was gone. She'd read the weight shift, seen the pre-spin telegraph in his hips. He was committed to the spin. There was no bailing out now. She slid inside his kicking arc, his own momentum throwing him past her. Garcia landed off balance, searching for a target that had vanished. Sarah was already behind him. She hooked his lead ankle with her instep, a simple trip that weaponized his own forward energy. Garcia's expression shifted to panic as his world tilted. He hit the mat hard, his back smacking the canvas. Sarah was on him, dropping into side control. He was sharp, immediately trying to bridge and buck to make space. But Sarah had already isolated his arm, her legs cinching around his neck and shoulder in a flawless arm triangle. His free hand came up, shoving at her face the textbook, predictable defense. Sarah used the push, rolled them both over, and came up in full mount on his chest. The choke deepened, her shoulder driving into one side of his neck, his own shoulder sealing the other. The carotid arteries pinched shut. The lights were going out. Garcia's eyes bulged. He thrashed, he pushed, he bucked. It was useless. His face flooded with red, then deepened to purple. He tapped. A frantic, 3-slap tattoo on the mat. Sarah broke the hold instantly, rolling off and getting to her feet as Garcia choked and coughed. 18 seconds. The gym was a tomb. You could hear dust motes settling. Sarah offered Garcia a hand. After a beat, he took it, and she helped him up. Good fight, Corporal. Garcia rubbed his neck, his gaze fixed on her. A flicker of something new respect was in his eyes. Where'd you learn that? My dad. Taught me to grapple before I could walk. Bennett's voice cut through the stillness. Lucky, one word, dripping with contempt. Anyone gets lucky once. The spell broke. A wave of murmurs rippled through the onlookers. The instructor stepped in, about to end it. But then Master Chief Turner emerged from the shadows. Sarah hadn't even noticed him, had no idea how long he'd been there. Turner's face was all hard angles and granite. His eyes, sharp at 62 years old, locked onto Bennett like a targeting laser. You got a point, Staff Sergeant, Turner said, his voice low. Once is luck, Bennett's smug grin returned. That's what I'm saying. How about 6 times? The gym went quiet again. What Turner said next would force Sarah to wager her entire career on a single, impossible night. Turner strode to the center of the mat. Every man there knew his story. Master Chief Robert Turner, a living legend, got his trident in 1982, fought in every shithole from Grenada to Afghanistan. He'd trained 3 generations of SEALs. When he spoke, God himself took notes. You got 6 Marines, Staff Sergeant Bennett, Lieutenant Mitchell, here is 1 SEAL. Turner's voice was quiet but filled the space. Odds seem a little skewed, don't you think? Bennett's confidence wavered. Master Chief, I don't. Here's what I think. Turner pivoted, addressing the room. We got 2 weeks of joint ops left. The mission is unit cohesion, but I'm sensing some questions about standards, about who belongs here. He turned back to Bennett. So let's settle it. An exhibition. Lieutenant Mitchell versus your entire fire team. 1-on-1. 6 straight fights, full contact, no time limits. The gym blew up, voices crashed over each other, the SEALs looked shocked, the Marines looked hungry. Sarah's heart hammered her ribs. 6 consecutive fights. She'd never done that. Never trained for it. Bennett snapped out of his surprise, a predatory gleam in his eyes. What are the stakes, Master Chief? Turner's smile was a razor blade. Lieutenant Mitchell wins, you write a formal, public apology to every woman on this base. It goes in your permanent record. Bennett's jaw set like concrete. And if she loses, she requests a transfer, out of Team 5, out of Spec War. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Her career, everything she'd bled for since she was 13 years old, all bet on one night. 1 week to prep for 6 fights that would define her life or end it. That week became a masterclass in exhaustion. 4:30 a.m. sharp. Turner outside her door, a black coffee in one hand, and a look that promised today would be harder than yesterday. He wasn't wrong. This wasn't PT. It wasn't even SEAL conditioning. It was something else. 5-minute rolling sessions against a fresh opponent every time. Again, Turner commanded, you're fighting 6 men, 2 minutes rest. Get used to fighting on empty. Sarah had 30 seconds between rounds. 30 seconds to gulp water and force her lungs to work. 10 rounds. 50 minutes of non-stop war. Her muscles were on fire. Her mind was thick with fatigue. 10 more. Sarah made it through 7 before she threw up. Turner handed her a bottle, gave her exactly 60 seconds. Again, by day's end, she'd done 25 rounds, over 2 hours of it. Her body was just a map of bruises held together by sheer will. But Turner was just warming up. Day 2 was about her father's system. Turner opened the old notebook to page 15. Small joints snap before big muscles fail. Fingers, wrists, knees, fast, efficient. Move on. No flare, no wasted energy. They drilled for 14 hours straight on joint manipulation. Turner's hands were her targets. She learned to see every joint as a lever, a weak point, a system designed to break under precise pressure. Your old man was an engineer before he was a frogman, Turner said. He knew bodies are just machines, and machines have tolerances. Sarah's hands performed the movements thousands of times, isolating a finger, hyperextending a wrist, learning the exact angle of failure by feel. Pain is a signal, Turner coached. You attack a joint, you're hijacking their whole system. Their brain has one job: stop the signal. Everything else goes out the window. They become a slave to the pain. By the end of day 2, Sarah could feel the mechanics of a human body in her hands. She knew its breaking points. Day 3 was about seeing weakness before the first punch was even thrown. Turner had Sarah just watch Bennett's squad during their regular PT. Your father's second rule, he said, tapping the book. Every fighter has a tell. Find it in 10 seconds. Use it in 1. Sarah watched. For real. Sergeant Cooper, nicknamed Tiny. 6'4", 240. A monster, but sluggish. When he gassed out, his left hand would drop, a habit burned in from years of humping a heavy machine gun. Corporal Davis, the sniper. Wiry and cocky. He loved his reach, but left his neck wide open when he transitioned. A bad habit that looked cool, but was a death sentence. Corporal Martinez, the corpsman, was a college wrestler. You could see it in his stance. Powerful, but predictable. Every takedown had the same entry, the same level change. She'd already figured Garcia out. He'd be coming for revenge, fighting angry and stupid. He was a known quantity now. Rodriguez, hound. A pure brawler. Zero technique. He loaded up on every punch, telegraphing his moves from a mile away. And then there was Bennett, the leader, a Golden Gloves champ. Technical, smart, but there was something else there, hiding underneath. She watched him on the pads. His cross was a hammer, his jab a hornet's sting. But if you looked long enough, the tell was there. Every time he snapped that right hand, for a fraction of a second, his jaw went tight. An old war wound, probably a rotator cuff that never sat right again. He tried to hide it, but the weakness was clear as day. She documented it all in a beat-up notebook, her father's principles on one side, her intel on the other. We're not learning to fight, Turner had said. We're learning to win before the bell rings. Day 4 would be about speed, about finding a gear she didn't know existed. Day 5 was about forging a mental edge for when the body quit. Turner set down a timer. Your old man always said, fast beats strong, smart beats fast. But fast and smart? That's a damn ghost. They drilled transitions until they blurred together. Guard passes, sweeps, submissions, a constant, flowing chain. No resets. Her body started to move without permission from her brain. It was muscle memory, burned in through thousands of repetitions. He moves left, you're already right. He shoves, you're already pulling him off balance. He thinks he's got you trapped, you're already smoking the wind. Turner ran her through transition drills for 8 hours straight until she moved like water, impossible to hold. Speed isn't about moving quick, Turner grunted. It's about not being where the punch lands. He had her sit, eyes closed, war game every single fight. See the win, feel it. Your brain can't tell the difference between a real scrap and a vivid rehearsal. We're giving your mind 6 victories before you even step on the mat. She saw Garcia's telegraphed spin kick, Davis leaving his neck exposed, Martinez's predictable takedown shot, Rodriguez's wild haymaker, Cooper's lazy left hand, Bennett's bum shoulder. She played out 6 wins, 6 different ways. The body follows where the mind has already gone, Turner said. More importantly, when you're sucking wind and everything hurts, your mind will remember winning. It's been here before. Days 6 and 7 were for recovery, but they also carried the weight of her father's final entry, the words that would have to hold her together when Saturday night tried to tear her apart, just barely. Turner made her do an easy 20 laps in the pool, letting the cold Pacific leach the ache from her muscles. Then, ice baths for 20 minutes, massage, fuel, and sleep. Fights tomorrow, Turner said that night. Body needs rest. Mind needs to be a razor. Tonight, you read. He handed her the notebook, open to page 83. Your dad's last entry. Wrote it the week before shipping out to Afghanistan. Sarah looked at the page. The handwriting was less steady than before. He must have known. Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I won't be there to see you become the warrior I know you will be. The toughest, smartest, most capable woman I can imagine. But remember this. Being strong isn't about never getting knocked down. It's about getting your ass back up. Being brave isn't about being fearless. It's about doing the job anyway. And being a warrior isn't about holding back tears. It's about wiping them away and getting back to it. I love you, kid. Make them remember the name, Dad. She read the words 3 times, pulling the notebook to her chest. Tomorrow, 6 Marines would do their best to break her. Tomorrow, she would show them what being a Mitchell meant. Day 7 arrived with a cruel, beautiful morning. By 2000 hours, 400 people would see something unforgettable. But she needed one last thing from her father. A gift Turner had kept in his pocket for this very moment. Saturday broke bright and clear. 72 degrees with a light ocean breeze, perfect Southern California weather. Her gut felt like it was full of lead. 1800 hours, 2 hours till showtime. She sat alone in her barracks room. Her father's notebook, his seal trident, and the worn-out Krav Maga black belt he'd earned were on the wall. They were artifacts of a heavy legacy. A rap on the door. It's open. Master Chief Turner walked in with a small gear bag. His expression was grimly professional, but his eyes were kind. How we doing? Terrified. Good. Your dad was terrified before every op. Said fear kept you sharp, made you check your gear twice. Only idiots aren't scared. Sarah managed a weak smile. He used to say that. Turner sat and pulled a worn piece of black cloth from the bag. Your dad wanted you to have this. Made me swear on it years ago. Said to give it to you when you faced your biggest fight. He unrolled the cloth. It was a black belt. Krav Maga. The edges were frayed with time. The black faded to a charcoal gray. This was his. He earned it back in 1990. Wore it for 15 years. Every drill, every deployment, he said it held his spirit, his fight, everything he was. Turner held it out. It's your turn to carry it. Sarah took it with trembling hands. The fabric was soft, almost weightless. She could feel him in it, his sweat, his grit, his love. Thank you, Master Chief. Don't thank me yet. You still got a war to fight. Turner got up. 2000 hours. Be on time. He paused at the door. And Sarah, your dad had one more thing he'd say before a mission. What? Pain is just weakness, leaving the body. You're about to shed a lot of weakness tonight. In 2 hours, Sarah would walk into that gym wearing her father's belt. What happened next would become a base legend. But she didn't know the real test wasn't the first fight, or even the fifth. The real trial would come when her body was shattered, her resolve was gone, and the only thing left was the words her father wrote 13 years ago. The gym was packed, a sweatbox. Every SEAL, every Marine, officers and enlisted alike, 400 people crammed into a space built for 200. In the center, a regulation ring sat under the harsh lights. The base commander had made it a sanctioned event. Sarah came in a side entrance. She was in standard PTs, black shorts, gray t-shirt, no jewelry, no distractions. Just her father's black belt tied at her waist. The noise in the gym dropped. A low hum of whispers started up. Master Chief Turner was already in her corner. He'd put together a proper team, 2 SEALs as her cornermen, with water, towels, and a med kit. Sarah climbed through the ropes. The canvas felt solid, real. This was happening. Across the ring, Bennett and his Marines were laughing, looking loose and confident. Garcia was shadowboxing. Davis was stretching. Martinez and Rodriguez were bumping fists. Cooper, the short, stocky one, was cracking his massive knuckles. Bennett locked eyes with Sarah and mouthed 2 words. Try crying. Sarah's face was a stone mask. The base commander, Captain Harrison, climbed into the ring with a microphone. Good evening. What you are about to see is an exhibition match, sanctioned under regulations for hand-to-hand combat. Medical personnel are on standby. The rules are simple, standard MMA. No strikes to the groin or throat, no eye gouging. The match ends by submission, knockout, or referee stoppage. He let that sink in. Lieutenant Mitchell will face 6 opponents consecutively, with a 2-minute rest between each match. The fighting order is by rank, from lowest to highest. Harrison looked at Sarah. Lieutenant, do you accept? Yes, sir. Staff Sergeant Bennett, do your men accept? Yes, sir. We can't wait. Then, let's begin. First match, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell versus Corporal Diego Garcia. The crowd went wild. Sarah walked to her corner. The next 25 minutes would decide her fate. What she didn't know was that Garcia had spent a week plotting his payback, and he had a nasty surprise waiting for her. Turner put his hands on her shoulders. Remember what we drilled. Fast beats strong. Technique beats size. You've already done this once. He'll be emotional this time. Good. Angry is sloppy. You stay cold, stay technical, end this fast. You've got 5 more after him. Sarah nodded, taking a deep breath, willing her heart to slow down. Corporal Garcia stepped into the ring, shirtless. He was all lean muscle, a taekwondo tattoo on his ribs. He bounced on the balls of his feet, an animal ready to spring. The referee, a senior SEAL, brought them to the center. I want a clean fight. Protect yourselves. Touch gloves. They did. Her hands looked impossibly small. Ready. The ref's arm chopped down. Fight! Garcia rushed forward, feinting a jab and a low kick to set up his spinning back kick. Sarah saw it coming. She had replayed this exact moment 100 times in her mind. The spin was beautiful, fast, clean, powerful. She stepped inside the arc of the kick, letting his own momentum swing him past her. Garcia finished the spin slightly off balance. Sarah simply hooked his lead leg, a basic sweep that used his own forward energy against him. Garcia hit the mat with a loud thud. Sarah dropped into side control instantly. Garcia tried to bridge and roll to make space, but Sarah had already trapped his near arm, her legs cinching around his neck and shoulder. An arm triangle choke. It was exactly like their first fight, but this time it was tighter, faster. There was no hesitation. Garcia's eyes went wide. His free hand slapped desperately against her shoulder. She used his push to reverse him, landing in full mount on his chest. The choke sank in deeper. Garcia's face flushed crimson, then turned a deep purple. He slapped out 3 urgent taps on the canvas. Sarah broke the hold and rose. Garcia sputtered, gasping for air as the crowd went wild. 15 seconds, 1 down. But her own breathing was already ragged. Turner saw what the spectators missed. Winning once was easy. The real war was surviving 6 consecutive bouts as exhaustion mounted. Garcia staggered from the ring, one hand on his bruised throat. Sarah watched him go, her breath already steadying, her heart rate settling back into its rhythm. Turner pressed a water bottle into her hand. Sip it. 2 minutes evaporates. The chill of the water was perfect. Her eyes swept over the 400 onlookers. Some were stunned, others electrified. The SEALs were ecstatic. The Marines were quieter, their certainty shaken. Bennett's confident smirk had started to crack. The ref barked, "Time!" The rest was over. Next up, Lieutenant Mitchell versus Lance Corporal Rodriguez. The man they called Hound came through the ropes with a murderous glare. This would be the true test. Her disciplined technique against his raw, unrestrained ferocity. They called him Hound for a damn good reason. 6'1", 200 pounds of pure aggression. His arms were covered in ink. His nose was a crooked testament to past brawls. He didn't showboat. He stalked to the center of the ring like a predator. "Ain't personal, ma'am," he grunted as they touched gloves. "Just a job." "I understand," she replied. The referee backed away. "Fight!" Rodriguez charged instantly, a storm of pure rage with no technique. He threw a wild right hook meant to take her head off a fight ender. She'd watched his training all week. She was ready. Every one of his punches had the same massive, telegraphed windup. It was powerful but hopelessly predictable. She stepped inside the attack, feeling the breeze as his fist flew past her shoulder. His own forward momentum threw him off balance, and she moved with him, turning his force into her weapon. It was a classic judo throw. Her hip acted as the fulcrum, his mass as the lever. Pure physics. Rodriguez was airborne before he could process it, his eyes wide with disbelief. He slammed onto the canvas, the impact driving the air from his lungs with a loud grunt. She heard him wheeze, but the man was tough. He was already trying to scramble back to his feet to get back to striking distance. She gave him zero room. As he got to his hands and knees, she mounted his back, her legs cinching his waist as an arm snaked around his throat. The rear naked choke was textbook. His neck was trapped, the carotid arteries compressed, starving his brain of blood. He grabbed her forearm with an iron grip, trying to pry it loose. He was far stronger, but raw power was useless against perfect technique. The lock was absolute. Her angles were perfect. No amount of muscle could break the hold. He drove upwards, managing to get to his feet with her clinging to his back like a rucksack. The crowd gasped. He stumbled, trying to ram her into the ring post, desperate to crush her free. She squeezed, feeling his frantic pulse against her forearm begin to slow. His steps faltered. "Tap, Corporal," she whispered. His stubborn pride made him shake his head, refusing to submit. As the world went dark for him, his legs finally buckled, and they collapsed together. She held the choke with disciplined control, knowing precisely when to let go. His body went slack. The referee dove in, frantically waving his hands. "Stop! He's out!" She released instantly, moving clear as the corpsman rushed into the ring. Rodriguez was unconscious, his face purplish but his chest rising and falling. The crowd was dead silent. This wasn't a sport now. It was dangerously real. She had choked a man out. What she wasn't admitting was that her body was already failing, with 4 more opponents waiting. 30 seconds on, his eyes fluttered. Confusion gave way to awareness. He looked at her, a flicker of respect in his eyes before shame took over. They helped him away. When Sarah stood, her legs felt like lead. That second submission had cost her dearly. That fight had been harder work. Turner steadied her. "Perfect technique. But you're gassed. Drink up. Sit." She dropped onto the stool, her arms humming with lactic acid. 4 more men, each tougher than the last. "Stay in this fight," Turner ordered. "Don't worry about the next 4, just the next one." "Time!" the ref shouted. Lieutenant Mitchell versus Corporal Brian Martinez. The wrestler stepped in, confident he wouldn't make the same mistakes as his teammates. But Sarah had studied his film for 3 days. She knew his one fatal flaw. Martinez entered, built like a brick house at 6 feet and 185 pounds. She'd seen his college-level wrestling, explosive takedowns and suffocating pressure. But thousands of hours of training had etched predictable patterns into his muscle memory. His plan was simple: shoot, take her down, and grind her out with his weight. Sarah stood, pushing past the fire in her legs. They touched gloves. Good fight, ma'am, he said respectfully. But this is my round. We'll see, Corporal. Fight. Martinez was patient, circling. He knew she was dangerous and that rushing in was a fatal error. He probed for an opening to shoot. She mirrored his movements, watching his hips for the dip that would signal a takedown attempt. 30 seconds passed in a tense standoff. The crowd was getting restless. Martinez threw a fake jab, then dropped low, shooting for a perfect double-leg takedown. It was fast and powerful, but she'd anticipated it, spotting the slight shift in his weight a half second before he moved. That was all the time she needed. She sprawled, driving her hips down and kicking her legs back to become dead weight. His takedown stalled. As his hands grabbed at empty air, she circled behind him, taking his back while he was still on the mat. But Martinez was a technician. He immediately tried to turn into her to escape. She read the move, locking a body triangle around his waist that he couldn't break. He defended well, hand fighting to protect his neck. Since the choke was blocked, she switched tactics. She controlled his posture, pulling his head back to expose his face. Then she began delivering short, firm punches from the back mount, strikes designed not to knock him out, but to force a mistake. They were legal and effective. 1, 2, 3, 4 strikes landed cleanly. When Martinez covered his head, he exposed his neck. She shot her arms in for the choke, but he tucked his chin tight. It was good defense, so she threw more punches. 5, 6, 7. His arms grew heavy as he burned through his stamina trying to defend. The referee watched intently, ready to intervene if the defense became mere survival. The strikes were relentless. Then, his guard dropped for a fraction of a second. The ref was on them in a flash. Stop! TKO! The fight was over at 2 minutes and 8 seconds, 3 down. She was halfway through, but her shoulders were on fire and her legs felt like concrete. The toughest opponents were still to come. The ref had done his job. Martinez was furious with himself for his mistakes. Sarah helped him to his feet. Good match, Corporal. Your wrestling is top-notch. Not enough, Martinez said, shaking his head as he left the ring, and Sarah returned to her corner. Splash her. Towel. 3 down. Halfway there. You feeling it? Gassed. No sense lying. Good. Own that pain. They're tired watching. You're tired fighting, but you're on top. Stay there. Sarah slumped down. Her shoulders screamed. Her legs were cement. 3 bouts, maybe 8 minutes of war pure, violent, controlled output. She'd never faced this. Never fought 3 trained men back to back. They'd war-gamed it, but the gym ain't the field. Reality was sucking wind, knowing 3 more hard chargers wanted to break her. Her mind flashed to her dad in Mogadishu. 4 hostiles, 11 minutes. Cracked ribs, a popped shoulder, and a rattled brain. He endured for 11 minutes. She had to last maybe 15, maybe 20. No choice. The ref called time. Next up, Lieutenant Mitchell versus Corporal Ryan Davis. Davis stepped in with a striker's swagger. Smooth, sharp, the best pure martial artist in the squad. He wouldn't rush. He'd make Sarah come to him. In her depleted state, that was a death sentence. Davis moved in with a sniper's caution. 5'11", 180 pounds. Lean, fluid, a Muay Thai specialist. Sarah had scouted him hard. He was smart, technical. This would be a real scrap, not some quick tap out. Davis was near her weight class, a legit fighter who'd just seen 3 teammates fall. He knew her game. They met center ring, touched gloves. His face was a mask of focus. Respect, ma'am, but I'm not going down like them. I know. Fight. Davis opened in a classic Muay Thai stance. Hands high, elbows tucked, perfectly balanced. No wasted motion, just pure professional calm. Sarah circled, guard up, watching his eyes, his shoulders, his hips for tells. Davis snapped a low kick to test her. She checked it. The crack echoed in the gym. He threw another. She checked it again. Davis was building a rhythm, setting a trap, making her react to the small stuff before the real attack came. For 40 seconds, they traded carefully. Leg kicks, feints, both sizing each other up. The crowd leaned in. This was a true martial arts chess match. Davis shot a lightning-fast elbow. Sarah barely slipped it, feeling the air move. Her counter jab was blocked. They broke. More circling. A minute gone. Both still had fuel in the tank. Davis threw a textbook 1-2 low kick combo. Sarah blocked the punches, checked the kick. Then he launched a knee at her gut, fast and committed. She caught it. Both hands clamped on his shin. In that instant, Davis knew he'd made a fatal error. His eyes blew wide. He was all in, perched on one leg. Sarah twisted, using his own force to throw him off balance. He hopped, trying to pull free to regain his footing. Too late. Sarah leaped a flying triangle he drilled into muscle memory, wrapping her legs around his neck and arm in midair. They hit the mat as one, her legs locked tight, one across his windpipe, the other behind his head, trapping his own arm against his throat. It was a perfect triangle choke. Davis was a pro. He immediately fought back, trying to posture up to create space to slam her, but she had the angle locked. She grabbed her own shin and cinched it down, tightening the hold, cutting off the blood flow to his brain. Davis struggled for 30 seconds, then 40, then 50. His face went crimson. He finally slapped the mat, tap, tap, tap. 1 minute, 44 seconds. Sarah let go. Davis rolled away, choking for air. After a moment, he got up, walked to her, and offered a fist bump. "Textbook, ma'am. Respect." Sarah returned it. "You're a damn good fighter, Corporal. Best I've faced yet." "Not good enough," he said with a slight, real smile, and left the ring with his pride. The crowd was electric. 4 men down. 4 combat-ready Marines. One after another. But Turner saw the truth. Sarah's limbs were trembling. 2 more to go. The biggest and the baddest were still waiting. Her body was redlining. She'd beaten 4 trained Marines, making it look easy, but inside she was falling apart. Her arms trembled. Her legs felt like they belonged to someone else. 4 fights in about 14 minutes. She was hitting the wall. Turner saw it. 2 left. The monster and the master. This is where legends are forged, Sarah. Mitchells don't quit. She just nodded, unable to speak, gulping water, trying to reclaim in 2 minutes what the body needs hours to repair. Across the ring, her last 2 opponents conferred. Sergeant Cooper, the giant, and Staff Sergeant Bennett, the unit's champ. Cooper looked rattled, having just watched 4 teammates get dismantled. Bennett's face was stone. He was processing, analyzing, recalibrating his strategy. The ref broke them up. Next match, Lieutenant Mitchell versus Sergeant Tyler Cooper. Cooper was 6'4", 240 pounds, 115 pounds heavier than her. The biggest man she'd ever face, and he had one unbeatable edge. He was fresh. Her body was failing, and his was just getting started. What came next would demand every last bit of her skill, wits, and grit. Cooper was a mountain at 6'4", 240 pounds, a full 115 pounds more than her, 13 inches taller, with the reach of an ape. He stepped through the ropes, and the ring groaned. Sarah forced herself to stand. Her legs barely obeyed. She met him at the center. He looked down at her, almost apologetic. "Ma'am, I really don't want to hurt you." "Then just fight, Sergeant." They touched gloves. His massive hand swallowed hers. "Fight." Cooper advanced, deliberate and slow. He'd seen that rushing her was suicide. His reach was a huge advantage. He could own the center and make her come to him. Sarah circled, her footwork feeling heavy. The lactic acid from 4 straight bouts was killing her speed. Cooper flicked a long jab. Sarah pulled back just as it whispered past her face. Another jab. She slipped it. He was just testing his range, controlling the space. For 30 seconds, he just worked that jab, patient and smart. Sarah had to get inside, but she was gassed and he was fresh. He could keep this up all night, picking her apart from a distance until she made a mistake. 45 seconds in, she slipped a jab and tried to close the gap. He just circled away, keeping her at the end of his punch. A minute passed. The crowd was getting edgy. It was a slower, tactical fight, but Sarah was watching, thinking. Cooper was huge, but his movements were slower. She remembered from training. When he got tired, his left hand would drop. A slight, unconscious habit. She just had to wear him down. Sarah pushed the pace, forcing him to move and punch more, keeping his guard high. Cooper played along, throwing simple but effective boxing combos. 1 minute and 30 seconds. He was breathing heavier now. Holding those massive arms up burned a lot of fuel. She watched that left hand. Still disciplined, still protecting his chin. 1 minute, 45. Cooper threw a heavy right cross. Sarah ducked under it and saw her opening. For a split second, his left hand dipped 6, maybe 8 inches as he recovered. Fatigue was setting in. Sarah moved on instinct. The next 2 seconds would be the most spectacular and riskiest move of the night. If she blew the timing, his 240 pounds would pulverize her. But if she hit it, Sarah shot inside his guard and launched herself. A flying armbar, one of the hardest moves to pull off. Her body went airborne, legs wrapping around his extended right arm as she fell backward. Cooper's eyes widened in shock. He tried to yank his arm back, but it was caught. Her legs locked on as her hips slammed against his elbow. They hit the mat with a crash. Her momentum pulled him down to his knees. His arm bent backward at a sickening angle. The pop echoed through the gym. Cooper screamed, slapping his free hand on the canvas in a frantic tap. Sarah released immediately. He cradled his arm, his face, a mask of agony as medics swarmed the ring. 2 minutes and 17 seconds. Technique had beaten brute force. 5 men down. But Sarah was on empty. A tremor shot through her legs, her vision swimming. Only 1 round remained, the final ordeal against the architect of this whole mess, Staff Sergeant Marcus Bennett. He was fresh, rested, and now acutely aware of how lethal she was. The gym had become a pressure cooker of noise. Sarah's own frantic heartbeat was a drum against the ringing in her ears. Turner guided her to the stool, forcing a water bottle into her grip. Drink. Breathe. You got 2 minutes, then 1 last go. She complied, her hands quivering from the brutal 15 minutes of constant battle. Every lesson from her father, every drill with Turner, had proven its worth. The Phantom Protocol worked, but the final test was here. Staff Sergeant Marcus Bennett, 6'2", 195 pounds of Golden Gloves champion. He was undefeated and hadn't broken a sweat. He'd spent the last 20 minutes studying her, dissecting her every move. Sarah glanced over. Bennett was warming up, his face a mask of cold calculation. The initial arrogance was gone, replaced by a warrior's appraisal. He knew he'd made a mistake in underestimating her. This one wouldn't charge him blind. He'd fight smart. Medics helped Cooper out of the ring, his elbow a wreck. She'd been precise, releasing the hold the instant he tapped. As they passed, Cooper gave a short, sharp nod, a gesture of pure, hard-earned respect. The ref checked on her. "Lieutenant, can you continue?" "Yes, sir. Final match, 3-minute rounds." "Understood?" She nodded. 3 minutes on, 1 minute off. But she knew this wouldn't go to the judges. Neither of them would allow it. Bennett was waved to the center. He seemed larger up close, his reach a clear advantage. They touched gloves, his expression unreadable. "You've proven your point, Lieutenant, but it stops here." "We'll see, Staff Sergeant." The ref's hand dropped. "Fight!" The next 6 minutes would drag Sarah past pain, past exhaustion, into a primal place where only the warrior's will to win survived. It was her heart against his. Bennett was no brawler. He started with a classic boxing stance, snapping a jab to test her range. Sarah slipped it, then another. He was a machine, building a rhythm, searching for an opening with disciplined form. This was a chess match of violence. She circled, desperately trying to manage her dwindling stamina. After 17 minutes of combat, she was running on fumes. He pressed with a crisp 1-2. She blocked the first shot. The cross clipped her shoulder with stinging force. He followed with a hook. She ducked under it, driving in for a takedown. Bennett sprawled perfectly, shoving her back to striking distance. 30 seconds in, he was running the show. A 4-punch combo came next. The final hook cracked against her ear, and her vision exploded in a flash of white. He smelled blood in the water. Another flurry came. A jab split her lip. She tasted blood. 1 minute down. She was a step behind, her body refusing to obey. He threw a straight right. She slipped and landed a low kick to his lead leg. He ate the shot, unfazed, and fired a cross that snapped her head back. She was losing badly. Losing this meant losing it all her career. her father's entire legacy. Then Turner's voice echoed in her head, "When you're broken, that's when you show them who you really are." 2 minutes gone, another clean combination landed. Her right eye was closing, her lip pouring blood. 2 minutes and 30 seconds. He jabbed, she slipped, and there it was, the opening. His right shoulder dipped for a split second, a flicker of weakness from an old injury. But she was too slow. The bell screamed, 3 minutes. End of round 1. She practically fell onto the stool. "He's winning," she rasped. "I can't get near him." "Yes, you can," Turner insisted. "You saw him favor that shoulder. Stop boxing. Get inside and make him grapple." "I'm too tired." "Then get tired on top of him. Get tired while you're choking him out." He grabbed her chin. "Your father fought for 11 minutes. You've fought for 20. This is the fight they'll talk about. Make it count." The buzzer sounded. She rose on unsteady legs and met Bennett at the center. He looked untouched. Round 2. Fight! He moved in with the same surgical precision, the same unwavering control. But she was done playing his game. It was time to show him what happens when you corner a Mitchell. He jabbed, she slipped. He jabbed again, she slipped and drove forward, closing the distance, smothering his reach. He tried to push her off, but she used his momentum against him. A simple judo pull as he pushed. His balance faltered for an instant. It was all she needed. A basic leg trip sent them both to the mat. He tried to establish his guard, but her grappling instincts were too sharp. She passed immediately to side control. He bucked and tried to scramble up, but she moved with him, fluidly taking his back as he turned. She was in her world now. Bennett was face down, Sarah locked onto his back with a body triangle. He was a fish out of water. He tried to stand, to shake her, but her legs were a vice. She was a permanent, suffocating weight. Her hands began hunting for his neck. He defended, tucking his chin, protecting his throat. She stayed patient, feeling his panic rise, his breathing grow ragged. She landed short, annoying strikes to his sides, forcing him to react. He made a mistake, grabbing at her wrists and momentarily exposing his neck. Her arm slid under his chin. She locked her hands. Rear naked choke. It was the same move that ended her first fight, but his chin was tucked tight. The choke wasn't clean. She squeezed anyway, the pressure on his jaw excruciating. For 30 seconds, it was a war of inches. Then, frustrated, he used both his hands to try and pry her arm away. That was the fatal error. She adjusted instantly, sinking her forearm deep across his carotid artery. The choke was now perfect. His eyes widened in shock. It was too late. He had maybe 10 seconds left. She could feel his frantic pulse against her arm. Bennett refused to tap, his pride blinding him to the end. The same arrogance from the beginning. 5 seconds. His struggles became weak and clumsy. 3 seconds. His body went limp. The ref dove in, waving his arms. "Stop! He's out!" Sarah released the hold. Bennett crumpled to the canvas, unconscious. The entire gym erupted in a deafening roar. She knelt on the mat, broken but victorious. 6 men, 6 wins, 22 minutes of hell. She'd made the impossible happen. But it wasn't time to celebrate. Bennett had to understand the lesson. The entire gym erupted. 400 troops were on their feet, the roar a physical wave crashing over her. Sarah stayed on one knee on the mat. Her legs wouldn't obey. She was completely gassed, having spent every lesson, every principle, every last shred of will. 6 bigger, stronger grunts, and she'd put every one of them down. The corpsman brought Bennett around. He'd been out for a solid 30 seconds. His eyes fluttered. Confusion gave way to awareness, then the hot flush of shame. He saw Sarah, still 10 feet away. Their eyes locked. In that quiet space, something shifted. Understanding, recognition, respect. Her legs shaking, Sarah stood and offered a hand. His pride warred with his honor. Honor won. He took her hand and let her pull him to his feet. The crowd roared louder, the SEALs chanting, "Phantom! Phantom! Phantom!" Sarah raised his hand with hers, a warrior's gesture. The noise died down a little. He leaned in, his voice a low rasp. I was dead wrong. Sarah just nodded. I know. How? Because you're still on your feet. Most guys would have tapped. You went out on your shield. That's a warrior, Staff Sergeant. Gender has nothing to do with it. His eyes glistened on the edge. Try not to cry, Princess. My own words. A small smile touched her lips. Blood colored her teeth from a split lip, her right eye swelling shut. And here I am, winning. The ref raised her arm high. It was official, documented before 400 personnel. She had done what they all said couldn't be done, proved her father's creed, technique over strength, intelligence over size, and heart over everything. Master Chief Turner climbed through the ropes and pulled her into a fierce hug. Your old man is watching, kid, and he's proud as hell. The feelings finally hit her. The pain, the exhaustion, the emotion, but no tears. Not yet. Warriors don't cry on mission. And this one wasn't over. What followed would prove the real victory wasn't just in winning. It was about whether a man could truly change, if honor could conquer pride, and if her fight had started something bigger. The gym slowly cleared out. Medics gave both Sarah and Bennett a thorough workup. Vitals, pupils, coordination, the full concussion protocol. Sarah sat on the ring's edge, icing her eye. Her lip was split, but it was shallow. Her body felt like it had been put through a meat grinder. Every muscle screamed. Her hands shook from the adrenaline dump. But she had won. 6 fights, 6 W's. The impossible, real. Across the ring, Bennett iced his throat where the choke had put him out. She could see the crushing weight on him, his entire worldview shattered in front of 400 peers. Captain Harrison walked up. His face was a careful mask, but she saw the pride in his eyes. Lieutenant Mitchell, impressive work. Medics have cleared you. Nothing serious. Thank you, sir. Staff Sergeant Bennett will honor the wager. Monday morning, 0800, full formation. He'll make his apology then. Harrison paused. You've proven something that goes beyond the physical. You've shown that excellence knows no prejudice. After he left, the heavy silence returned. It wasn't hostile now, just weighted with all that had occurred. Bennett finally spoke, his gaze fixed on the mat. You could have let me tap, save face. You chose the choke, not the armbar like with Cooper. You put me to sleep instead of just breaking something. She considered it. An armbar wouldn't have taught you a thing. You needed to wake up on this canvas. You needed to feel a total loss. No excuses, no luck, just superior technique. He gave a slow nod. Rachel would have liked you. Sarah waited. My sister, she wanted to be a Marine. I told her she was too small, too weak, a liability. His voice cracked. She died before I could ever take it back. Before I could tell her she was right. For 8 years, I've made sure no woman could prove me wrong. Because if one of you could do it, it meant she could have, too. And I killed her dream for nothing. The raw confession hung in the silence. This was never about her. This was about Bennett's sister. About his guilt. 8 years of grief that had curdled into bitter prejudice. What she said next could change one man, or it could start a movement. Sarah let his words settle. Your words didn't kill your sister. But trying to stop capable women from serving, that dishonors her memory. I know, I get it now. He finally looked at her. Teach me your system. Phantom protocol. Let me pass it on. So the next Rachel doesn't have to face what you did. She extended her hand. He took it. It was a pact. Tuesday morning, 0600. Bring your squad. The weekend was for recovery. Ice baths, therapy, sleep. Her body mended from 22 minutes of brutal combat. By Monday, she was moving right, both eyes open, ready. 500 personnel stood in formation. The whole base. 6 Marines stood behind their squad leader. Sarah stood at parade rest beside Captain Harrison, with Master Chief Turner behind her. The morning sun was already hot. Bennett marched to the podium, his dress, blues, immaculate. His ribbons were perfect, but his face was strained. Good morning. I'm Staff Sergeant Marcus Bennett, Force Recon. I stand before you to make a formal apology. His voice was strong, carrying across the parade ground. To Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, to every female service member here, to every woman who has ever worn this uniform, I was wrong. He let the words land. I was completely and inexcusably wrong. I judged a fellow warrior on gender alone. I allowed my personal issues to become my professional standard. I chose to humiliate, not to evaluate. His hands trembled faintly. On Saturday, Lieutenant Mitchell defeated my entire squad, 6 trained Marines, while exhausted. She did it with a skill and spirit that humbles me. She proved capability has nothing to do with gender and everything to do with heart. He turned and faced her directly. Lieutenant Mitchell, you are the definition of a warrior. I am sorry I doubted you. I am sorry I tried to break you. You have my deepest apology and my highest respect. Bennett saluted. It was perfect and crisp. Sarah returned it. The SEALs started clapping, and the applause spread through the ranks. The apology was public. But what came next would show if words led to action, if prejudice could become partnership, and if this victory would echo beyond this one fight. 8 weeks transformed his squad. Sarah ran them through Phantom Protocol every morning, teaching them how technique beats size and brains beat brawn. Bennett became her sharpest student, obsessed with the principles behind the moves. He needed to understand the why it worked, how it worked. An unexpected thing happened. They became friends, the kind forged in conflict and sealed by respect earned in blood and sweat. Sarah found she loved teaching, loved breaking down her father's system, and seeing the light go on in their eyes. Then, one Tuesday morning, everything changed. Sarah was on the obstacle course with the squad when Captain Harrison appeared. Mitchell, Bennett, conference room, now. They double-timed it to the admin building. The room was full of brass and a civilian whose suit might as well have been a CIA uniform. Sit. Harrison's voice was clipped. We have a situation. Yemen. 8 American contractors were taken hostage 3 days ago. Intel places them in a compound near Saha. We're spinning up a rescue op. SEAL Team 5 is led, with Force Recon in support. Harrison's gaze locked onto Sarah. Lieutenant Mitchell, you are commanding the close quarters battle element, 12 operators, a mix of SEALs and Marines. Your mission is to get those hostages out alive. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. A real-world op. Lives depended on her. This was the test everything had been leading to. But was she ready? And would Bennett follow her into hell? Yes, sir, I accept. Gunny Bennett, your squad is attached to Lieutenant Mitchell's element under her command. Any objections? Bennett didn't miss a beat. None, sir. An honor. The next 72 hours were organized mayhem. Intel dumps, gear checks, rehearsals. Sarah architected the op using every lesson she'd ever learned. Sarah was on the deck of the USS Winston Churchill as dawn broke. Master Chief Turner met her at the rail. He'd pulled favors to be there for this. Your old man stood on a deck just like this before Mogadishu, Turner said. Same damn sunrise. Sarah just nodded. I'm scared, Master Chief. What if I get someone killed? You carry it. Same as every commander before you. But listen, Sarah, your plan is rock solid. Your team is squared away. Trust your gut. Trust the training. Trust that your father's Phantom Protocol was made for this. 12 operators mustered in the hangar bay, kitted out in full battle rattle, weapons hot, ready to go. Sarah stood before them, 12 sets of eyes on her. Gentlemen, we have 8 Americans in enemy territory. They've been held 4 days. The clock is ticking. Our mission is direct. Get in, get them out, and bring everyone home. She hit the switch on the briefing screen. 3 structures. The hostages are in the center building, 2nd floor, with a minimum of 6 guards. She walked them through each phase, covering every contingency. Bennett asked pointed questions. The SEALs offered tactical tweaks. By the end, the plan was locked in. Rules of engagement are simple. Deadly force is a go, but the package is priority 1. If you have to choose between a shot and a hostage's safety, you hold fire. We take the risk, they don't. Sarah scanned their faces. Questions? Silence. Gear up. We go in 30. What came next wasn't a training exercise. It was real-world chaos, where one mistake meant a body bag. This was where leadership meant bringing your people home, and where Bennett had to decide if he could follow a woman through the gates of hell. The insertion was smooth. 2 RHIBs made landfall at 02:15. No enemy contact. The team moved inland, swift and silent. 2 clicks in 40 minutes, crossing rough, dark terrain. Sarah took point with Bennett right behind the stack in formation. They hit the compound perimeter at 02:55. Through her NVGs, Sarah saw 3 bored sentries, smoking, clueless. She gave the hand signal. 3 SEAL snipers got into position. Sarah gave a silent countdown on her fingers. 3, 2, 1. 3 hushed reports echoed, and 3 sentries went down without a sound. They never knew what hit them. Sarah moved up. The stack followed like a shadow. At the main building, Bennett prepped a breaching charge. Silent count. 3, 2, 1. The charge blew the door inward. Sarah was the first one through. HK 416 shouldered, her NVGs turning the world a ghostly green. Hallway was clear. She pushed forward. The stack flowed behind her, a single deadly machine. Contact. 3 hostiles in the adjacent room, armed and reacting. Sarah's rifle coughed twice. Center mass, tango down. Bennett dropped the second. A SEAL took out the third. 7 seconds flat, 3 threats gone. They kept pushing. Stairs. Sarah led the way up, slow and deliberate. A fatal funnel. But they had no other choice. At the top, another hall, angry Arabic voices. Sarah's window was closing fast. She moved quickly, cleared the hall, found the locked door. Bennett used the shotgun. 1 blast to the lock and the door flew open. 8 Americans were inside, bound but alive. Sarah's team swarmed in, cutting restraints, assessing injuries, and pushing them to the exit. Then, gunfire erupted from downstairs. The compound was hot, mission blown, move. The hostages were on their feet, terrified, but they could run. The team hurried them to the stairs. Bennett and 3 Marines provided rear security, laying down suppressive fire. Halfway down the stairwell, Sarah saw it, a hostile rounding the corner, weapon coming up. She fired first, a double tap. Threat down. Keep moving. Ground floor. The front door was 60 feet away, but the courtyard was a kill zone, lit by muzzle flashes from at least 15 tangos. The front was a death trap. Back door. Bennett, find it. He and his Marines broke off. Sarah and the SEALs held their ground, making every shot count. Then Bennett's voice. Clear path to exfil. Move! They executed a fighting withdrawal, hostages in the middle, operators on the perimeter. They burst through the back door into the darkness beyond the compound's lights. Sarah's team was built for this chaos. The enemy wasn't. They ran 2 clicks toward the beach. The hostages, driven by fear, kept pace. A mile out, the world exploded. Muzzle flashes from a ridgeline, at least 15 hostiles with heavy weapons. A PKM machine gun ripped into the ground around them. Sarah's team was pinned. And that's when it all went wrong. The kind of wrong that forges leaders or breaks them. The team hit the dirt and returned fire, but they were trapped. Bennett saw it first. A small depression in the terrain, a route to flank the ambush position. Hayes, we're flanking, he yelled over the comms. Give us 30 seconds of cover. Roger that. Sarah switched her rifle to full auto, the SEALs joining in. Bennett and 4 Marines moved like ghosts, fast and low. They got behind the enemy line. The muzzle flashes shifted as Bennett's team engaged from the rear. The ambush collapsed, caught in a deadly crossfire. Bennett's team neutralized the remaining threats with cold efficiency. Then Sarah heard it, his voice strained. I'm hit. Right leg. Can't walk. The decision was instant, the kind that defined a commander. Team, secure the package and get to the exfil point. I'm going back for him. Negative, Lieutenant. Turner's voice was sharp in her ear. That's an order. Send someone else. Not happening, Master Chief. Sarah was already sprinting back toward Bennett, 60 yards of open ground with rounds cracking past her. She found him behind a rock, a tourniquet already applied to his leg. Good training, but he wasn't going anywhere. "What the hell are you doing?" Bennett grunted. "Saving your ass. Now shut up." She grabbed his vest and hoisted him in a fireman's carry. 195 pounds of Marine on her 125-pound frame. She ran, legs burning, lungs on fire. Bennett, slung over her shoulder, returned fire. 50 yards, 40, 30. Her vision narrowed to a tunnel. Her legs were numb, but she just kept moving, one foot in front of the other. 20 yards. Her team laid down a wall of covering fire. 10 yards. Sarah's legs finally gave out. She collapsed, and Bennett rolled free. SEAL medics grabbed him, dragging him the final stretch to cover. "Air support inbound, 30 seconds," Turner's voice promised. A pair of F-18 Hornets screamed low overhead, their 30mm cannons tearing the hostile positions apart. The enemy fire ceased. The exfil helos, a pair of MH-60s, landed on the beach. Sarah helped load the hostages, all 8 accounted for. Her team was all alive. Bennett was the last one on. Medics already working on his leg. He grabbed her hand. "You saved my life. After everything. You're one of my Marines, Gunny. We don't leave people behind." Sarah squeezed back. "Besides, you're not getting out of training on Tuesday." Bennett managed a laugh, then grimaced. "Yes, ma'am." The helicopters lifted, and Yemen disappeared below. Mission success. 8 hostages rescued, 0 American KIA, 1 WIA who would make a full recovery. Sarah slumped against the bulkhead and let the exhaustion wash over her. She did it. She led a mission, saved lives, and proved her father's system worked where it mattered. But the real challenge was just beginning. 6 months later, she would face a choice that would define her. And Master Chief Turner was about to tell her something about her father that would change her world. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell now stood in a DevGru training facility at Dam Neck, Virginia. The promotion came with her new assignment to SEAL Team 6, the Navy's most elite unit. The Yemen operation had fast-tracked her career, proving her leadership and tactical skill. Bennett had fully recovered and had taken a post as the Marine liaison to DevGru. He'd accepted the position instantly. Now, Sarah taught advanced close-quarters combat to 32 operators from every SOF branch: SEALs, Rangers, Marine Raiders, 30 men, and 2 women. Bennett assisted her, having mastered the Phantom Protocol during his recovery. Today's lesson was about overcoming a size disadvantage. Sarah asked for a volunteer. A massive Ranger, 6'5" and 230 pounds, stepped up. "Size is a factor in a fight," Sarah explained to the class, "but not how you think. This Ranger has 80 pounds and 7 inches of reach on me. But watch." The Recon Marine played his part, took the fall, and sold the move perfectly. Afterward, a female Marine raised a hand. "Ma'am, the head game. How do you handle it? The constant noise that you're not big enough." Sarah's lips curled into a slight grin. "You don't. You make it a non-issue. You get so squared away that performance silences all the chatter." "Excellence that can't be disputed earns your stripes," Bennett chimed in. "For the skeptics among us, we get schooled, usually the hard way. I got put to sleep in front of 400 Marines. Best lesson I ever learned." The room filled with laughter as the training resumed. Once the squad bay cleared, Bennett approached her. "Major, your 1600 brief is in 10 minutes. Sarah glanced at her watch. Right. That meeting, it had been a shadow over her whole week. "Thanks, Gunny. Get the gear stowed." "Already handled, ma'am." Changing into her dress blues, she crossed the Marsoc compound toward the memorial garden. It was a somber place of black granite etched with names. Sergeant Major Turner was there, retired but still a fixture, a mentor to the raiders he'd forged for 3 decades. He was 63, showing more silver and lines, but his gaze was as sharp as ever. Sergeant Major, Sarah. His use of her first name was the warm greeting of family. "How's the instruction going?" "It's solid, really solid. Dissecting Dad's system, watching it click with the new guys. It feels right. Your old man would be proud of that. He always wanted the Phantom Protocol to outlast him. Looks that way." A quiet moment passed between them, their eyes tracing the rows of names. So many fallen brothers. The cost of being the tip of the spear. Sarah's fingers found her father's name, tracing the cold, sharp letters. Gunnery Sergeant William Mitchell. It was the same ritual, the same connection reaching across 13 years. The call came down today, Sarah said, her voice low. Task Force Command, Afghanistan, high-value targets, 6 months, boots on the ground. You gonna take it? I'm not sure. There's a part of me that still feels the need to prove it. That Saturday night wasn't a one-off. That Yemen wasn't just luck. Turner stayed silent for a long moment. Your father said something to me the night before his last op, the one he didn't walk away from. Sarah held her breath. She couldn't find words. He told me being a warrior wasn't the fight, not the wins, not the validation. Turner's tone held the gravity of 13 years of memory. He said it's about grieving for your fallen brothers, wiping the tears, and getting back on the line. Because the mission always goes on. Because someone has to hold that wall. Turner's voice grew thick with emotion. He said, warriors hurt because they're built to feel the whole goddamn thing and still execute. Strong enough to shatter and still stand their ground. The tears Sarah had been holding back for years finally broke free, hot and fierce. For her dad, for 13 years without him, for the crushing weight of his legacy, Turner put a firm hand on her shoulder. You've been fighting those tears since you were 13. Since the day those officers brought that folded flag to your door, you became all steel and fury. Bennett's words on that first day echoed in her mind. Don't you dare cry, princess. As if tears were a weakness. And what did you discover? That he was dead wrong. Crying isn't the weakness. Refusing to cry when you need to, that's the real weakness. It means you're not facing it, not healing, not acknowledging the price. Turner gave a solemn nod. Your father grieved after every mission where we lost a man. He'd find a private corner, let it out, then square himself away and get back to leading. He was the finest raider I ever knew, the strongest man I ever met, and he mourned. Bennett appeared at the garden's edge, hesitating. Sarah waved him in. He approached with quiet respect. Apologies for the intrusion, ma'am. Quick update. The Afghanistan brief is pushed back 48 hours. High Command wants to review your recommendations on the team roster first. Sarah looked from Turner to Bennett, her gaze finally resting on her father's name. Make it 72 hours. I need some time. Bennett nodded, turned to go, then paused. Ma'am, you're the standard. Your father would be immensely proud. When he was gone, Sarah faced Turner again. I'm taking the deployment, not for proof, but because it's the job. Because there are bad men out there who need to be dealt with. Someone has to go. Your dad would say the same. But Sergeant Major, when I get back, I need to take some leave. Real leave. Head home. See my mom. Stand at Dad's grave and just talk to him. Unpack all of this. Be human. Turner pulled her into a firm hug, the kind a father gives. That's the sharpest thing I've heard you say in a long time. Your old man would approve of that 100%. The two warriors stood in the Garden of Heroes, remembering the fallen and preparing for the fight to come. Sarah stepped back, dried her face, and squared her cover. Time to brief my team. What are you going to tell them? That the mission is a go, that we have a job to do, that people are counting on us, and that we are ready. Turner smiled. Your father had one last thing he always said before a mission. And that was, try not to cry, kid. But if you have to, you do it after the objective is secure. Tears are for when the fight is over. Then you get your head right and get back to work. That's what being a warrior is. Sarah started for the briefing room, Bennett falling into step beside her. Staff Sergeant, I appreciate you being willing to learn, to change your perspective. Ma'am, thank you for showing me what right looks like. You saved my life in Yemen. I'm in your debt. You owe me nothing. But if you want to square it, help me train the next generation. Make sure skill is the only thing that ever matters. Deal. They arrived at the briefing room where 12 raiders were assembled, the team she would lead into the mountains of Afghanistan, warriors who would follow her into hell because she had earned their trust time and time again, until any doubt was erased. Sarah stood before them, thinking of her father, of Turner, and of the journey that brought her to this moment. Gentlemen, we have 6 months of hard work in front of us. Let's get down to how we're going to get it done. The brief commenced, plans were laid, and contingencies were war-gamed, the meticulous work of warriors. Later that night, in her quarters, she sat with her father's journal, his trident pin, and the frayed black MC map belt he'd earned. These were the relics of the legacy she now carried. She reflected on the trials, on Bennett's change of heart, on Yemen, and on the deployment ahead. A single thread tied it all together, her father's belief in what she could be. Sarah took out her own journal and began to write. Dad, 13 years back you gave me the Phantom Protocol. Tonight, I'm making an addition. Because the system is more than just a set of techniques. It's a philosophy. And your most important lesson was this. Warriors aren't defined by avoiding the fall. We're defined by getting back on our feet. We aren't defined by suppressing our tears. We're defined by wiping them away and finishing the mission. You said, try not to cry. But you also demonstrated that grief doesn't make us weak. It makes us human. And a human who chooses to fight despite the pain, that is a warrior. I'm taking a team into Afghanistan. We will hunt our enemies, rescue the innocent, and do the hard work. When I return, I'll visit your grave and tell you everything. Until then, know this. You built something that will outlive us all. The Phantom Protocol is not just mine anymore. It belongs to Bennett. It belongs to every Marine I train. It's for every warrior who learns that skill eclipses strength, wits, beat, size, and spirit conquers all. Thank you for making me ready, for having faith, for creating a system that proves competence knows no gender. I love you, I miss you, and I will honor your legacy. Sarah, she placed her notebook next to her father's. 2 generations of warriors, 2 volumes of wisdom, 1 enduring lesson. Real strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about accepting the breaks and choosing to heal, to rise, and to fight on. 3 weeks on, Sarah was on a C-17 out of Andrews. Bennett and her team were with her, steeled for 6 months of operations. As the aircraft climbed out of Virginia Beach, she felt the smooth metal of her father's dog tags, a constant touchstone to his legacy and love. A young Marine across the aisle noticed, "Are those your dad's, ma'am?" Yes, he was a Raider. KIA in Afghanistan, 2011. I'm sorry for your loss. Don't be. He went out doing what he loved, watching his team's back, serving the Corps. Sarah offered a small smile. He taught me everything I know about this life. The most critical lesson being that try not to cry is about timing, not toughness. Ma'am, warriors mourn. We just pick our moments. We grieve after the mission is complete, after the job is done, when we've earned the space to feel what we held back. Sarah glanced at her team. Then we square ourselves away and prep for what's next. Because the job is never finished. The war goes on, and someone has to stand that line. The young Marine nodded, a look of deep understanding on his face. Sarah leaned back and closed her eyes. In 6 months, she would be stateside, take that leave, see her mom, and stand over her father's grave. She would let the tears fall and process it all. But right now, there was a mission. A team that relied on her, enemies that needed finding, and people who needed saving. For now, she was Major Sarah Mitchell, Marsoc Raider, a Phantom Warrior, and her father's daughter. She had finally understood the truth. Warriors do cry, for the fallen, for the cost, for the pieces of themselves they leave on the battlefield. Because only those who have been broken know what it takes to stand whole. They grieve, they dry their eyes, and they get back to the fight. Not because they were ordered to be tough, but because it is who they are. If this story resonated with you, ensure you're subscribed with notifications active and let me know which city you're tuning in from.